So you see the topic on the screen, and the topic probably should sound slightly tricky. Like I'm trying to ask you a question which has an obvious answer. And answer to this question is yes, you can. And that's probably the point where I can probably wrap up and say, hey, I'm done. I'm done for today. And that will be a way faster session, of way quicker session, than you mentioned. But the true question is different. If you're an executive and your challenge will be, okay, moving from Dynamics to Power Platform, am I going to lose a lot of functionality I cannot afford losing? If you're a developer, you'll say, hey, I have so many features I have dependency on from first-party apps. Can I migrate without much? Yeah, without much. Thank you, Charles, for feedback. So yeah, can I have move from Dynamics to Power Platform and not lose that first-party apps with much cost to me? And final thing. If you're close to finance, maybe an accountant or maybe a person who's making decisions about licenses, your question will be, can I migrate, save money, but not have something which will bite me up later when I'll see the disadvantages? So I'm going to answer all these questions today. And the agenda, give me a sec. And yeah, and this is the agenda for today's session. I have 39 slides. My expectation, I'll probably burst from them quite fast because some of slides are simple, kind of not placeholder, but just introduction of the topic. So I wouldn't expect it will take too much of your brain power to digest. In terms of time, it's probably be 30 to 45 minutes. I think it's 45 minutes, more likely 30. Time will go really fast, and I'll decide to speak so fast. A friend of mine did a course of stand-up course during COVID time, and he told it was really funny to have your audience on mute. So he did a Zoom class, and he felt he was delivering his speech almost in a bathroom where you have no one laughing and no cheering, just quiet. And that pace can affect and can start moving things too fast for me. So the topics I'm going to cover is building business case. Majority of challenges you will see migrating from Dynamics to Power Platform is actually find a reason why you need to migrate. Then I'm going to cover base for technology. It will be slightly technical. Yeah, it will be slightly technical when it will get the reach and know-how stage. And final one, I'm going to touch how the new world where you're migrating, hopefully from Dynamics to Power Platform, when you'll be platform first kind of a company or team, how your team might look like, what the new roles will join. But the main gist, the main meat of the session is know-how. So you'll see if you're coming for technical questions or for technical topics, you'll hear them. Yeah. So let me introduce myself. I'm working with Dynamics since 2003. It's a very long time. It's so long that everything feels as a old play. Everything new coming up, I feel it happened some time ago. But definitely there are a lot of new things which affecting the Power Platform and Dynamics, and I'm going to cover those in a bit. I have the slide of, I asked my marketing team to put the slide of companies which we deal with. And the only intention is not to boost my confidence or whatever, but just to give you a clue that a couple of controversial points I'm going to make today are coming from experience. And this experience is from real companies. It's not just I've read a book or I heard it from somebody else. So just to give some credibility of the points I'm going to make. And before we go to the next level, I want to understand how many technical people, how many function consultants we have. So maybe in the remote session mode, maybe people who are functional, can you maybe thumbs up and I'll see. Yeah, okay, one. I can see one. Yeah, Nathan. And how many technical developers, technical people who frame themselves technical we have on the call? Okay, Aiden. Yeah. So for somebody, yeah, Teams doesn't show me. So I guess Aiden will be accurate to claim that probably 80% is technical and 20% functional? Because for some reason I haven't seen all the thumbs. Probably. Yep. Okay.
You might want to try the raise hand feature. That's easier to get a count on if you're trying to count people.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe let's do it another way. So yeah, if you're technical, maybe raise your hand, and I appreciate just to see. Okay, 3 people, 4 people. And do we have F&O people or customer engagement CE people? So if you have F&O, maybe raise your hand, and I'll ask CE later. Okay, we don't have F&O. We have Charles on hold. So maybe I don't know what it means. Maybe yeah, he decided to opt out. There is a joke now about F&O. You know, if you meet an F&O person and you're a CE person, you probably should start moving in the opposite direction because there is nothing to discuss. There is no topic to share. And this is exactly what I'm going to say in a couple of minutes, that if you're F&O, this session will be more discovery for you than actually applicable. But if you're in CE or Power Platform, this is 100% tailored probably to your needs. And final thing I want to say, do we have any Microsoft people? If you have a Microsoft, maybe raise your hand if you're Microsoft. Okay, so I was delivering this topic in Microsoft London office in Reading, not in Reading, in Paddington, London. And the joke was the topic, you know, pretty much I'm going to explain how we need to screw Microsoft to decrease the cost of license. I mean, customers. And somebody said it's probably my last year having that MVP badge. And I hope not. So I'll explain my case. But having Microsoft in the room is valuable to give another reason. Yeah, another reason for transition. So I think enough introduction. What happened since I joined Dynamics Space? 2003. I was working for a business school in a marketing capacity role. So I was sitting and a couple of my colleagues were telling, yeah, hey, we need something to do email spam, you know, like normal spamming stuff, which email outreach, they call it today. And I couldn't find a decent app. And then somebody was saying, hey, you know, when you open the emails, we want to see who is tracking, you know, clicks, who's opening emails. And that thing didn't exist in 2003. It wasn't, MailChimp I think it was there, but it wasn't that popular. So the main challenge in 2003 was us seeking apps. We were trying to identify, filling a gap. And this is how I found Dynamics in those early days. It was CRM 1.2, 1.0 CRM. And we started using it because we lacked a tool which will cover all the gaps. So 2003 was a thing for when you were looking for apps to cover gaps. So what happened later? You having Dynamic, or in those days it was what? Microsoft CRM. So you had Microsoft CRM, you had MailChimp, you had maybe some components coming from HubSpot. And all of these things came as a zoo of apps. You had so many different people work on different features, duplicating each other. You had partners, you had a HubSpot partner, you had a Microsoft partner, you had MailChimp maybe, you had people maybe hiring as contractors. So from a single app, quite soon you get into environment where they had too many apps coming into game. So what happened in 2023? Sorry, 2023, maybe even 2022, we came, ChatGPT, it became the thing for everyone. And actually, I believe another thing happened finally, and I'm getting close to explain the business case for migrating from Dynamics to Power Platform. One thing happened. We realized that if you have such a fragmented environment, your AI, which hopefully will be Copilot, was announced a couple of days ago, publicly available for everyone. Everyone realized having such a fragmented landscape, our ecosystem as they call it today, you might be in a position that data sitting in silos where AI will never get hold of. So what happened, I think, for us, for people who do Dynamics, and if you are a technical person who on the customer side, person who dealing with the product, you finally came with a strong business case to have one single platform. And this is my way of maybe to a Microsoft person to tell what I'm going to explain here. And my intention will be to tell that you as a customer or as a provider have to deal now with a platform-centric environment. And platform-centric environment means you will have no cliffs for your data when the AI will be reality in your in your world, I mean, in your company, you will see your apps as actually extension for the platform instead of apps, separate platforms. And you will be in a position where you'll have to deal with an army of citizen developers, people who are extending that Power Platform. And this is actually the fundamental landscape shift when we're saying you need to move into Power Platform world or in the platform world. And this is probably one of the key takeaways. If you forget whatever technical discussion I'm going to get into in a couple of minutes, my key message will be you need to think on the how to transition from whatever you have. And Dynamics is just my example, I understand very well. How to transition from anything or any app to a central Power Platform, and Dynamics will be a good example, even though it might sound like it's cannibalizing some profit for a gentleman on the call. Anyway, so first thing I'm going to, for people who may be not well aware of difference between Dynamics and Power Platform, usually FNO people get slightly more confused, or maybe you have never dealt with the, you haven't had to grasp or didn't had time to understand the difference between different components. I'll try to explain how you need to look at it and what's the shared common ground so we can move further. If you look from branding perspective, it's to the left. You can see it doesn't set a clear picture. You cannot say, okay, if it's field service and it's customer service, or it's project operations. So where the Power Platform here? And Power Platform might be a small box, so it's not, so marketing doesn't help. Second, if you look at schema, I intentionally made it small so you cannot see all the details. It's not the point. But if you look at this thing in the middle, schema wouldn't explain it. Even I would rather say it will confuse you as much as branding itself. You have elements for sales, you have elements for service, but Power Platform is not there. So the only thing which really helps and really gets the common ground is solution components. If you look at the solutions which Power Platform has and solutions which Dynamics has, they have the same schema, I mean the same model, schema, user interfaces, templates and processes, security roles. So this is the answer, and this is the fundamental which you need to get on board with to understand and to move to the next phase. Now I'm shifting gears into a business case, and to explain why it's important. A couple of months ago, when I was delivering the session, I think I had the same session in Slovenia, one of developer approached and told, hi, I'm talking to my executive, not executive, I mean the CIO, the person who's leading the team. And I'm telling him, yeah, we need to transition. Look, cost will be lower moving to Power Platform. We're not using that functionality. Complexity app is there, and the guy is nodding and saying, no, I don't get it. I don't see a reason why I need to migrate. This is kind of confusing topic. And building a business case is something you probably will deal first before you even have to go into technical details. The first one, which you need to consider, I intentionally put the price of Power Platform, price of Dynamics. When I say $5 against $95 for Dynamics license, it doesn't picture the true difference. And the difference you can see on the screen is quite dramatic. And if you multiply by count of licenses, average company has, this is a strong business case, and this is actually a quick win. And maybe it's one of the key reasons why people join this call and consider moving. It's just to understand the difference between, they see the difference in price. And I need to say why Microsoft actually let me talk, or people who advocated for Power Platform. There is that vibe in MVP community. Dynamics is dead. I don't agree with that, but anyway, the reason why Microsoft lets us do that is, at the end of the day, Microsoft cares that you joining and using a platform or using something to build something for you. So if Dynamics is not a good fit in your company, then you can start smaller with a smaller set of features and build up and have maybe a better fit for your company, and having maybe citizen developers who will assist you there and grow faster. I'll tell even a different story. Some of the partners from Canada told that when they cannot win a business from Salesforce doing Dynamics, they can easily pitch Power Platform for workloads which are not sales related. And the moment where you're within the Power Platform game, in customer, you can grow into Dynamics and any other products. So at the end of the answer to this question, Power Platform, Microsoft cares about Power Platform as much as it cares about Dynamics, and Dynamics is just a product, and Power Platform is. Yeah, so I see a question from Jamie. And please be active, I would appreciate it. So counterpoint, the cost of development, maintain custom Power Apps that does the same feature. Maybe, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the case. So if you, I'll have, actually just spoiler alert, at the end of the session, you will see a questionnaire, like a, like psychology run questionnaire, and you can gauge and identify how many points you get it by the end of it. And it will be one of the things, do you have dependency on Dynamics? So that's a very good point. And please feel free to send your questions or comments here. I can see them. Second point, adoption. And just give me a sec. Yeah, okay. Adoption. If you look at, this is the Power Platform app. So app built on Dataverse, vanilla Dataverse, or data with limited number of entities. And just compared to Dynamics full set, I think this is a full-blown sales app. I'm not sure it's actually up to date. It looks quite old. So to give you a flavor, just to understand, I'm going to flip between two screens. And every single time when you see so many buttons, so many clicks, your adoption will be challenged. A good example will be how much time, can you remember how much time have you spent on learning Instagram? How many help articles have you read on Instagram, Facebook, I don't know, Twitter, or X, how they call it now? So if you think that through adoption and a simple app is actually app which offers less, so less is more is definitely in the world of adoption. This is where another reason Power Platform can provide you more value or easier adoption than a full-blown set of buttons and features which people might have challenged to navigate and learn how to use. This is a second point you might want to use with the if you'll have to build your business case. And close to final one in this category. So why the move? So look, when I was talking about sales, and this is my bread and butter, sales, this is just this box. And if you FNO or you know anyone from FNO, I think it's sitting here. So you'll have to deal with all this complexity at some point, because when you're planning and when you're doing corporate implementation, as you know, probably, you need to future-proof any idea, any app you have. And if you decide to use, let's say, invoices, or you're going to use some, I don't know, stock management, you need to think, okay, if we're going to go into FNO one day, I need to be aware of that schema or that the model they have in FNO, because I don't want to be the guy who will be blamed by executives or company leadership why we haven't foreseen the stock management or invoice structure of future ERP module we will have. So when you have this complexity ahead of you, that's actually scaring. And implementation complexity is one of the reasons you might want to start with Power Platform if that complexity is beyond what you need today. Another reason I pick up from a YouTube Copilot demo, I think it was beginning of this year. And this is, by the way, the only AI it was a Copilot. Yeah, it was the only AI or Copilot mentioning you're going to hear today. I'm on a committee for a conference in Slovenia, and I see the applications coming through. You can tell majority of them are AI based. So I think if you have a session with no AI, you're almost kind of old school today. So what I'm saying is the only time you'll see AI and Copilot on these decks. So what Summit Chauhan, I think that's how you pronounce her surname. What she said, in PowerPoint world, just 10% of people using the functionality. She was trying to say Copilot will have to cover those 90%, but I like this statement, and I'm sure in Dynamics world, it's true for FNO and for sales and for all these apps. And when you understand that majority of people not using all the power, but you're paying all the cost and you're dealing with all the complexity and you need to deal with all this stuff, you might scratch your head why I'm doing that and why I need that complexity. It should be, so instead of me trying to build a business case for migrating Power Platform, the true business case should be built and true argument should be built for Dynamics. why I need full-blown dynamics if I have a Power Platform? And so there is a final statement before I go into technical side of things, and it's starting from basics. I believe Power Platform is the best tool for proof of concept. I heard Charles Lamana once said that in 2010, when you've been a startup and you were trying to buy all your hardware, you're not considering cloud, you're probably bound to death, or maybe it's kind of IQ test. And today in 2020, probably in 2023, if you're trying to build your proof of concept using all C#, SQL, those high pro code tools, when you're just trying to prove your business idea, trying to run a simple kind of test, a low fidelity prototype, then Power Platform is ideal candidate because you can do way more stuff and be ready for initial few customers way sooner than anything else. So when you can start from basics, this gives you opportunity to consider and move fast and test ideas before you'll spend a fortune just having developers and having maybe more sophisticated team than you can afford. The same true for corporate environment where you're testing an idea. Power Platform can be a quick and dirty way of building first set of interfaces and giving custom and user hands just to see it. Another reason why you might want to think of starting from small, you know how Salesforce selling, they say. I've never been in a room with Salesforce. I've been in rooms with some other vendors, but not with Salesforce competing for Salesforce. I don't know why, but it's actually the reality. So I was told you can have a meeting from Salesforce, and in a couple of weeks, you'll have almost turnkey, so not turnkey, almost done solution. You can go and use it. So on to the second or the third meeting, they have customer, they can show the final version of the product. So how they achieve it, how they reach that goal, they have 20 people working behind the scene for a couple of weeks. In your world, when you need to prove or you need to convince somebody, with Power Platform, you can do it in a couple of days, being a single man. And obviously you can do it on top of Dynamics, nothing prevents you to do on Dynamics. But when you have a Power Platform and when you, let's assume you don't have Dynamics in-house, starting a Power Platform environment will take you from 0 to hero way faster than anything else. And this is, I think, the final reason why you want to move. So before I go to the next stage, are you okay? You're doing well? Like, pace is fine. You're not getting excited. If thumbs up if you're not sleeping, you're still not watching. Okay, perfect. You can see people still around. Migration planning. And migration planning, this is where we'll get into technical details. The journey looks with feature gap analysis. This is actually a very funny way of feature gap analysis, because usually when you say gap analysis, you're looking for gaps. I'll give you in a second a clue. Well, we will not look for gaps. We will look for some other stuff. Then you prepare your data and entities. And when I call them entities, that's actually tables. It's just I'm probably spent too many years using term entity and I cannot still switch to table. So it's a table, a Dataverse table. License limitation, environment preparation. Those are things you will have to go through, and I'm going to cover all of them. So the first feature gap analysis, and this is where it gets kind of slightly wicked. It's you look not for the gaps, you look for abundance, or you need to abandon features which you have in the system. I'll give an example. So in Dynamics, you have qualification from lead to account, from lead to account. And if you spend time, I think that's one of the first things you learn doing in Dynamics. So this feature, this functionality, conversion, qualification from lead to account, from lead to contact, is not something which exists in Power Platform world. And this is a functionality which you can, by the way, replicate probably using Power Automate in a couple of hours, worst case. But this is an example of features you'll have to give up and move away. So when you're doing a gap analysis, it's almost kind of future gaps. And these gaps and features you should feel comfortable to abandon. And this is a unique way of seeing gap analysis. So out of box automation users should be analyzed to decide what you're going to leave behind. Second thing is check how many first-party model-driven apps are being used. A good example of model-driven app used to be a team. If you remember the team license, which I think is still available. At least I know some environments where I saw team license being actually used, which they probably shouldn't. So that team license tied to a first-party app, and that app obviously will go away. If you use a first-party app for sales module, you will have that also gone. If you have huge dependency on sales apps or those first-party apps, you will have first-party model-driven apps. You will have to consider as a showstopper or some kind of blocker on your way. If you have LinkedIn integration, LinkedIn probably will not be. I don't think it's. Last time I checked, it wasn't there. You couldn't do a Power Platform to LinkedIn integration the same way you have sales. So some of apps and first-party integration might not surface on Power Platform. But to tell you the truth, I remember the customer who migrated from Dynamics. Not all workloads have migrated to Power Platform, but majority of workloads were migrated. They saved a fortune just by reducing count of licenses, full-blown Dynamics license. And the thing is, when we did the analysis, the takeaway was they customized their system so heavily. Their Dynamics 365 CE was customized so heavily. They barely used any out-of-box entities outside of contact and account. And I'm going to talk about the entities and tables in a moment. So for that discovery was they have no dependency on Dynamics and they can move safely and easily. And that guy who did this transition for on the customer side, he was a hero for a year because he saved. I think their user count was 2,000 licenses, and not all of them migrate to Dynamics. To Power Platform, but quite a few, and they saved the money this way. By the way, what they did, they didn't reduce the invoiced amount from Microsoft. They actually switched that budget to different than Microsoft products, like some Office 365. I think they switched from E3 to E5 license. So they decided to almost kind of upgrade their system for the same budget. And this kind of thing you need to look. And giving this example, I need to tell this is the last thing you want to check on the list. If you see a lot of blockers on, I'm talking about automation, first party, model-driven apps, you will have to go and see, maybe you have a couple of workloads, maybe you have assistant team, maybe you have junior people who work in CE or maybe in FNO, not FNO, sorry, yeah, in field service and project service, where they use features which not very dependent on Dynamics, and you can switch to Power Platform, and that could be your first move. So when you move to when you do data migration, you can have a very interesting experience, because effectively when you migrate from Dynamics to Power Platform, you do migration from Dataverse to Dataverse. This kind of a luxury, majority of migrations where you do, let's say, SAP to Dynamics or SAP to Power Platform, you will see the schemas at source and schemas at target are very different. The types are different, field names are different, everything is different. So here you have that luxury when everything looks identical. And this is the beauty you need to think of. By the way, this is another thing I'm going to say in a couple of minutes. You need to consider having schemas, magic, having that luxury should be your goal also, because sometimes when you're migrating or you decide to go to a vanilla Power Platform, you might do a huge mistake, kind of rookie mistake, try to have a new prefix, changing all your schemas, because your schemas will have new prefix, and new prefix will mean that all fields will look different for a machine, kind of for an integration tool. So you need to be careful to be sure that schema is identical, and it's the luxury you can afford. Another thing you need to consider is same environment. Sometimes you can have Dynamics on the same tenant as your Power Platform apps and Power Platform licenses, and it's the luxury you can have. And I definitely recommend to consider maybe not move completely from Dynamics to a new environment, but maybe create just apps just on a smaller license. And final thing, unfortunately, you cannot see these migrations is walk in the park. It's still a migration. You still need to plan for data mapping. You still need to consider archiving. You'll still have some things to fix. But if you'll match your schemas, if you'll consider the same environment, and you'll be careful doing your data mappings, that I'll tell you, enjoy the smoothest migration you can ever have in your life, because at the end of the day, it's same beast behind the scene. The final thing you will probably consider is license limitations. And when you look at license limitation, the first thing people will say, hey, I have so many, I heard about restricted entities, but my assumption, all my entities are probably, all my dynamic types, account, contacts, opportunities, leads, all of them are restricted. And spoiler alert, it's not true. But I want to ask people, maybe if you don't mind, maybe message me in chat, how many entities you know or you think are actually restricted by Microsoft requirements? 3, okay. I like Aiden. Yeah, 15. Anyone else? Jamie, Aiden, thank you. Question mark? I know Indonesia had a story about it before in presentation. Yeah, true. So I'll show you in a second. Let me hold the intrigue there. Yeah, Aiden, you're right and wrong, and Jamie slightly more. So I'll explain in a second. The second thing, you need to consider storage limitation. When you're switching to a new license, your storage will shrink, and this can actually be very impactful. So you need to consider that. And final thing is multiplexing. And I know I believe probably majority of people in the room know what's multiplexing, but for those who don't know it, a good example is, imagine you have a cookie jar in your house, which is just for your family and just for your kids, and your neighbor found a reason to convince your son or your daughter to get into back home, take a cookie from your jar and share it with him. So this is effectively multiplexing. And in technical terms, it means you have some workload, some IP, some automation, which will get into dynamic space and Power Platform Dataverse and try to consume functional to trigger workloads which are not allowed to trigger having no licenses. So this is a good example where you will be multiplexing, and this is a quite complex thing. There is nothing to the boundaries are quite fuzzy. What I'm going to say, if you think that your neighbor is stealing your cookie, or you're going to steal, or you are the neighbor and you're going to steal Microsoft cookie, be careful, because that's effectively multiplexing, and that's how it might surface. Because you might think, okay, I'm now on Power Platform. I'm not using Dynamics. I'm good to go. I can consume it through backdoor now. There is no probably technology to enforce it, but there is an audit check which can tell, okay, you guys breaking. So this is the heaviest slide I have, so bear with me. These are restricted entities. So for those who, Aidan, you mentioned 3, and Jamie, you mentioned 15. You're right and wrong in 2 ways. First of all, if you look if we ignore all the entities which are definitely look like a Microsoft entities, you can tell from schema that some kind of workflows. You actually have 7 or 8, right? 6, 7, yeah, 7 entities you probably care, which are affecting. And guess what? Account is not there. Contact is not. Opportunity, the one of the concerns I have personally had from customers, opportunity we can't use. No, you can. So the only thing is case entity incident. And by the way, I think there was a change in May this year. If you'll Google for restricted entities, you'll find that article on Microsoft Help page. You will see that the case now can be consumed through Power Platform with some restrictions. I don't want to get into that, but all in all, if you're not using customer service, and if you don't have any service desk which has huge dependence on incidents, and majority of customers don't have it, you're fine to move to restricted entities. So you're fine to use, you're safe to go. And this is probably one of the revelations for many customers. And I remember years ago, I was sitting, I think it was 2016, I was sitting on a call with a customer and Microsoft person on a call. And Microsoft person, so intention was to work out through how we can switch, how we can decrease the license cost, and maybe do some massaging to budget in-house. And I was surprised that Microsoft person asked me this question: are you sure we can use restricted entities? And I was puzzled, say it's probably a question to you, not to me. And you should tell now, having a single source of truth, having a single document will put you at ease, and you can say, hey guys, we definitely can use, we're not using incident entity, we can probably switch to Power Platform. And to be fair, you probably shouldn't expect that Microsoft people or support people know all these answers, because at the end of the day, this is not probably what Microsoft is being paid for. Transitioning from Dynamics to Power Platform is us consultants coming to game and trying to be clever and help customer and to find a better match. So knowing this will help. Second thing with Power Platform license, obviously, by the way, the pay user plan, so per app plan is still available. There was I think a couple of weeks ago, the per app plan has been taken away from the website, but it's still available on price list. And I think it's, as far as I understand, it's still available. Per user plan is now changed to premium plan, but you can still go for a cheaper one if you decide to have one app, one portal. The database capacity for everyone who's dealing with Dynamics knows that capacity is a big deal, and capacity is always a problem. You need to be, your housekeeping should be in such a good shape that you should be, it's a challenge to have enough storage even at full Dynamics license. But yeah, for 50 megabytes, you might have some challenges. So be careful and be sure that capacity is still there. By the way, alternatively, what you can do, you can just buy capacity, but it's also not cheap. So those kind of things you want to consider migrating. When you do your migration preparation, there is a tick box which many customers forget to tick or untick. So when you create a vanilla environment for Power Platform, if you tick this box, it will bring all Dynamics tables. And I heard so many times when people think in Power Platform say, "Hey, we transition to Power Platform Dynamics now. Can you go and remove first-party entities, first-party tables which Dynamics used to have, and we're not using them?" And the answer is probably no. I don't. At least I'm not aware of a way how you can, having full Dynamics schema, moving to Power Platform, how you can cut out, and you can obviously clean up the data, but schema will be there. And I'm sure that schema slightly probably affecting your storage and consumption. Maybe I'm sure it's probably affecting. Reset environment. Yeah, that's actually, yeah. So when you're resetting environment, when you're doing in-place migration, so you're staying within the same environment, the reason why you're doing it, probably you want to keep data and you don't want to go for data migration exercise. So resetting environment will reset all your data. So I guess this is kind of a challenge people have. If you're starting from the scratch, if you decided, you know what, whatever garbage I have in my Dynamics, I'm going to start with a Power Platform clean cut and just move over some data. That's actually ideal. That's my recommendation. Consider creating a new environment. But sometimes the customer I mentioned, they decided to stay in place. So they decide to do like a hybrid setup where you have a couple of Dynamics licenses, especially those who depend on LinkedIn integration. And majority of users are Power Platform people, so they couldn't really cut out some of stuff anyway. And final thing to consider, that when you do your migration, your data might double. So what I mean, let's say you have a new environment and you decide to copy over and migrate data, at least for a week or for a couple of weeks, maybe for months, you're going to have the same data set twice or close. So be aware that the storage size will double, and all the complexity, all the issues coming up with that, you wouldn't be able to backup, you wouldn't be able to restore your stuff, etc., etc. Now let's talk about tools, which will help transitioning. One of the key tools I like very much is Kingsway Soft, and it's actually SSIS extension. Kingsway Soft is not free for integrations; it's free for data migration. Kind of, I don't think I'm featuring Kingsway Soft so much that probably I should reach out and ask for some kind of reference fee. But my message to you, if you're doing just one-off migration, you can probably use your development environment and the license probably, you can sort it out other way. So it's no way free or freemium model, definitely a right word to use. So what Kingsway Soft can do, it can match your schema, do automating matching for you. It can override GoID, so the same way how you can do it usually using API. So this is a very helpful thing when you deal with lookups. And I'll give an example how you can do two-step pattern of data migration, data relevant for Power Platform, Dynamics to Power Platform, and Kingsway Soft is really good there. Second set of tools you want to check out is Power Automate. The Power Automate wasn't designed. I remember I was doing a course with Microsoft I think it was fast track architecture kind of course, and they were saying, hey, Power Automate is not Power Integrate. Don't use Power Automate for integration, or I mean high volume integration. That's actually a very good way of putting it. If your customer, your boss tells you we can use Power Automate for migration, probably you can do it for small entities, small set of entities. And you need to look at data volume. If you're migrating hundreds of thousands of lines, it will affect your number of API queries, etc., etc. It will affect your consumption. So you might have some issues. Power Automate maybe not ideal for those workloads. While it was tailored and designed by Microsoft is Data Flows. Data Flows is, for those who never use it, it's a tool was designed, I think, for Power BI. And intention was, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree, Nathan. Yes, Power Automate for migration is really bad idea, in my humble opinion. Data flows you can use. So it was designed for Power BI, and intention for data flows, you can migrate anything into Dataverse. It's super important to say to Dataverse. Data flows cannot migrate, for example, from from Excel to SQL. If your destination is Dataverse, and obviously our destination always will be Dataverse in our example, you can use them. So they're powerful, but but the skill set is way higher than Kingswaysoft. I believe Kingswaysoft is easier to use. And final thing is XRM Toolbox. I don't think I need to introduce XRM Toolbox. This is a tool I like a lot, and it was introduced, I think, when Dynamics. Another thing I'm sure when Dynamics was on-premise tool. On-premise product, and it's still unfortunately on-premise. Yeah, Azure Data Factory. Yeah, you can use it. I forgot to mention you can build your own integration. Nothing prevents you to use some logic apps and create those connections and use. Yeah, you have some other more pro code tools. I'm going to give you again at the end an example where a citizen developer did a migration for us. So some of our function consultants. And the thing which I want to mention, XRM Toolbox is really powerful for any kind of data transition. And since you're dealing with Dataverse here at source, a Dataverse at target, tools really help. Kudos go to all those people who are building XRM Toolbox plugins. What I did, you can make a screenshot of this slide. I pre-selected tools which will help you at migration stage. And below the lines tools which help with data quality check. And I really like data validation checker because that thing will help you feel comfortable that data is in the right place. You can run some tests, automatic quality like QA tests using the tool. Another thing worth saying, XRM Toolbox has a disclaimer: do not use it on production, which basically makes no sense, no point. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So XRM Toolbox shouldn't be used in production, but I'm sure people who are using it probably. I'm guilty. I'll use it a couple of times for sure in production environment, knowing what to do. So the answer to how to feel safe about it, if it's an open source tool, you can probably open and see source code if you're technical, and feel that is it well-written code? If it's a well-written code, it's probably it's a well-designed tool. I have on my channel, my YouTube, I could probably feature if you don't mind, my YouTube channel. I have an interview with Jonas Rapp, and he put 5 steps how you can choose a decent plugin in the system. So I recommend to go and check it out. And one of the key ideas here, check open source and check the history of the tool. If it's good, and you feel comfortable, you can probably use in production. But this is kind of low code, no code means. And by the way, XRM Toolbox probably was the first citizen development tool for early days Dynamics. Another thing I need to feature is my dear friend, Steve Mordew. People who probably know this guy. He created his Rapid Start tool it's a free product, which helps you take Dynamics and land somewhere without spending anything. And he spent so much time to tell and play with fields and make it really simple. So this kind of your answer for adoption, what kind of adoption, how adoption may look like. Tools like Rapid Start might help. Yeah, thank you, Aiden. Thank you for that. So I see we have. I have to go. I have like 7 slides more to get through, so I'll try to wrap it up. The good example, what we did, there was a customer. whom we did a migration from Dynamics to Power Platform I think in 2 weeks. And their intention was why they wanted to migrate. Obviously, the cost was, I think it was a small business, if I'm not wrong, but they were an ISV and they wanted to use Power Platform as their kind of backbone for everything they do. So Dynamics was slightly a big beast for them. They had to deal with so many components. They decided to move to Power Platform, and they asked, "Can we start from scratch?" And the idea was, so what we did first, we created a list of tables, forms, views, business rules, and flows. Literally, we mapped them out. We created a spreadsheet with names and everything just to see the complexity of stuff we're going to deal with. How many tables, how many forms, how many views and business rules. Then we did the data migration preparation. So we mapped and transferred data. And the final step was code fix. And I'm going to speak quite fast. So when you're doing data mapping, the beauty of it, if you've been careful migrating your schema, migrating your customizations to a new environment, and you use Kingswaysoft having the same schema target, so Kingswaysoft would instantly identify your target. So literally, you click one button, and it says, you can see here, you see input column and destination column. The connector realized the fields are identical, and it matched for you. So imagine you have an entity which has 100, 200, 500 fields. I saw an account and contact entities tables. I saw even 700 fields. Imagine going hand by hand just because you had a different schema. Not schema, different prefix. So imagine you do it by hand. So if you have identical schema source of target, the Kingswaysoft literally takes one click to do all the mapping for you. And it's actually mind-blowing how easy it is. Then, what we do, and this is a pattern I definitely recommend when you do migration. So do it in 2 steps. First of all, migrating data with no lookups. We call it static data. So all your text fields, all your so all types of fields you have in the system, booleans, whatever, you map them first and migrate first. So you create effectively unrelated set of tables at target. And then second run, you can do it with Kingswaysoft. You can do like a tick and tick fields. And the second run with the same setup, you do lookups. So effectively what you do in the first run, you get the unrelated tables, and second run, you just do lookups. So running this pattern we never had any problems doing it. When we try to do other way around, how they usually do, contacts and counts, and then you do matching and lookup matching, that takes way more effort. So 2-step process definitely helps. And final thing you definitely need to do is to adjust different user ID, because new user ID might have a new environment, might have different ID than your old one. And that, especially if you're going to introduce or remove some users. Final thing, business rules and flows will have to be translated and checked sometimes by hand and using customization, but usually involves some kind of hand-to-hand battle. Plugins and scripts might need some intervention. Your URL is different. A couple of things might affect, and I'm sure some of your some of your scripts were written maybe not following best practices. So you need to address them. It's literally going one by one. Usually you don't have many of them, since you're not dealing with plugins and JavaScripts which which you have in Dynamics, and you can afford dropping some of them. The workload and complexity is not that huge. And final thing, new schema names might be affecting. So this is the magic questionnaire and assessment you can run. And I think I have a couple of slides. Security roles. Security roles should be picked up, I think, when you do the customization migration. So security roles will be there, but definitely, so security roles will be as a part of your customization migration, should be there, part of the solution. That's actually a good point about security roles, that some of security roles will have to be amended, or introduce new security roles, because you effectively have a new set of apps. But in terms of migration without customization down the road, it should be fine. So this is the assessment you can run. If you have any dependency on restricted entities, if you have none, you get 3 points. Obviously, you have a lot of dependencies, you cannot afford dropping them, you have 0 points. And by the way, if you FNO, you also, if FNO, you'll get 0 points and 3 for if you're not an FNO. So FNO kills it instantly. in a way. If you're moving from FNO to Power Platform, it's not an easy game today. Another thing, if your executive team have some urgency to reduce license costs, this is exactly you'll get 3 points, and that's a huge driver in some with some customers we had. And yeah, if you're starting with a platform, that's another 3 points you get. So if you get 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 everywhere, and you get 15 points, yes, you're good to go. I think your ideal candidate. Majority of customers will be, or majority of developers, majority of environments will be probably between 0 and 15. And this is where you look at some workloads, reducing maybe complexity, or not complexity, look at simple workloads. And if you got 0 points, then you probably should stay, and maybe it's for good. I think Dynamics is a good fit for you, and maybe Microsoft sellers, when they get into account, they can run the same and might have a quicker win, just like something to give away to customers. Hey, you know what? This kind of workloads or this persona in your user group can actually have Power Platform workloads. I'm getting to the final set of bits, and this is I'm pretty much done with technical, and I'm done with the migration. What I need to say, and I'm going to feature Mark Smith, who is still IBM, as far as I remember. I had the opportunity to talk to him a couple of days ago. So, center of enablement. What's going to happen when you're switching to a platform-centric environment, and you have so many people now being able to build, you have citizen developers joining. You will need to start approaching your people, so when you hire developers from outside, developers are usually well-trained. They know how to deal with anything, pretty much any technology. They just need to train on Dynamics, and it's a small skill for them to learn. When you're educating subject matter experts into citizen development, the learning curve is way steeper, and the complexity with this becomes sometimes insurmountable. So what I'm going to say, it's just a single slide, migrating to platform-centric environment. You will have your citizen developers will be subject matter experts or maybe external hires. It's very unlikely to be existing developers, and you shouldn't really see professional C# developers as people who will do all day long low code, no code, and not touching development. It's probably misuse of skill sets. So different people might have different opinion, but this is my controversial statement. My experience, citizen developers, new people for Power Platform will be SMEs or external hires. So your education platform, education program should not actually be that much dependent on Microsoft certification paths, because things like bot chat you might never use in your company, but certification requires it. So what I recommend to do is to take their certification, take Microsoft certifications, and build your own certification, maybe taking 80% of that and asking people to go and train, but just maybe take away some bits which are less relevant for you. Don't try to be fixated so much in certification path. Yeah, cherry pick some modules you can use and create your own exercises. That's another thing super helpful. You should give your people opportunity to use Power Platform and fail. So giving them opportunity to exercise will help. And yeah, some of the things we do internally, we have lunch and learns, we have internal conferences, which enable. So what we do today, we have function consultants who are actually advising customers, because low code, no code enabled us. And what we do to upskill them in some basic technologies, lunch and learn, and internal conferences. And I definitely recommend that. This is done for today. I actually expected to wrap it up sooner. So I hope you don't mind that I gave you just 3 minutes for question, but that's pretty much it. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?
I thank you, Vlad. That was awesome.